I know what's going to happen. As I start typing, some things are going to change, people. So worry not, I will fix this up shortly. But it should change when I click this V button. Boom. And everyone, I'm live now on YouTube. Send that message. Yep. Sent that in the correct chat. Yes. And it came out beautiful. And I was correct. So I go back to here. I will chuck on my headphones and just make sure that the audio is coming through correctly. That is important. Oh, today is going to be a fun one. My friends, everyone who's tuning in live at home is going to be a very fun one. I'm looking forward to this because it is a topic I care deeply about. So, yep, that sounds pretty good. I'll create a new one here. Yeah, sounds a little bit echoey, but I can't do that much with the setup that I have here with the mixer. I can't eliminate the echo, which I normally would like to kind of get rid of, unfortunately. But yeah, that's something I can change in the future. Live now on YouTube. Talking about coding versus programming versus human languages. Put that there, put that there. If Gene Bean is listening right now, I'm not going to have time to do an alt text thing, which you're requested. I mean, I'm not going to post it to Mastodon. I'm only posting this to Twitter. But yeah, just so you know, mate, that is something I will try and do in the future. But I'm running out of time right now. Live now on YouTube. Tune in now or you'll have to wait 2 days for the release of the audio and video. Oh my God. Talking about programming versus human language. Cool. 7 on the dot. That is still coming through pretty good. I will change this back to here. That should work here, even though I'm not in the correct screen. I think I have time to just share one more place. I've got to make sure I don't lean too much out of the screen. Yeah, post this here. Sending this to my brother because he might be interested in joining the chat he's working at the moment, but busy. But yeah, and I see there's people here. Everyone live now. I won't know everyone that live now on YouTube. They're probably, I don't know. They haven't commented about me posting links and stuff in our kind of group chat with friends from home. So hopefully they're all okay with it. And if not, they should have said something earlier. But I am pretty raring to go. I think I'm just about ready to start. To be honest, got my notes, got stuff for the Boostagram Lounge set up. I think that should be coming through correctly now on the screen. Yeah, even though that's coming through there, not through my headphones. Am I sitting front and center? I believe I am. Close that. And yeah, if anyone writes anything in the chat, I will certainly be there. Cool. Okay, I think I'm ready to kick this off. So let me just minimize this down. Stop that. Bring this over here. Bring my notes up. Because there is a little bit of lag on the screen, and so it can be hard for that to come in through. So yeah, here we go. Welcome, immortals. Welcome, immortalites, to another round of the Musings episodes. You only have Kyron here today on Wednesday, 10th of May. As we all know, Juan has had a baby recently, but with some exciting news that he might be coming back soon. You're going to have to check and wait until the end when I'm doing some housekeeping to know more about that. A musings session, an episode, is where we, or in this case, I pick a topic and delve deeper into that. I have a fair few notes and a bit of research that I've done today, and it's definitely more on the deeper side of things, but no conversation, but there might be a lighthearted touch here and there. So I will jump into it, and today I'm going to be talking about coding versus spoken languages or human languages. So in particular, this is linked, I guess, to my yearly goal, and it's something that has just been coming up recently for me in a couple of different areas. So the yearly goal, so one of my yearly goals for 2023 was to understand basic coding is what I had written down. And in particular, I had a fair stab at Python in this year, and I've still got 3-4 months left of my kind of calendar year for yearly goals to still try and do some more of that, but you'll understand why I might not be pursuing that as much soon. This is, I suppose, triggered, I guess, by my recent thoughts on why it hasn't actually captured my attention. So like I said, I have been attempting this a fair few times, and you'll see in the next slide that comes up, or the next image on your screen, that there was a couple of books that I read on this, and just the whole process of it never captured me, which I found really interesting, because I thought, okay, human language, I know I enjoy doing that. I've picked up Spanish to a relatively decent degree, and my German is getting into, I'd say, very good beginner. And I just thought, okay, like coding, programming languages, it is another language. Surely this is something that I will find interesting. I'll be able to pick up, and it'll be similar to learning another language, a human language. And yeah, once again, just I'll have a bit of a definition, some similarities, some differences, and even some of the learning styles before I summarize on my general thoughts on this issue. So just stay tuned for that. And then this was also once again triggered by my chat with Dave Jones recently, and I was asking him, okay, how much of this is kind of linked to creativity is maybe one of the reasons I was struggling a little bit with the coding languages, the programming languages with Python. Is it because I'm kind of an uncreative person, and this is why? So yeah, all of this is kind of mixed up in together, and that's basically what I'm going to be going over on this episode. So let's jump into, I suppose, the definition and my experience, so you can kind of know where I'm coming from. So the definition of a language, I looked this up before, was a structured system of communication primarily through grammar and vocabulary. So for example, we obviously have the human languages, and this typically originates and comes from different countries, but dialects are also mixed in with this. So think of things like Mandarin, Arabic, of Icelandic, of English, of Spanish, German. Every country basically has their own version of it, and then there's some countries where English is, American English, UK English, Australian English, New Zealand English, those sort of variations. Typically, there is about 5,000 to 7,000 human languages, and I think I'm not sure exactly how they have separated these up, and what's the difference between Spanish and Catalan or Catalonian, or what's the difference between Spanish from Colombia and from Spain? Are they still considered the same Spanish, even though there are some major differences, like there is no vosotros in the Latin Spanish, and there is in the Spanish from Spain, and then there's this kind of weird mix midway one in Argentinian Spanish, or are they all the same? I don't know all these things, but 5 to 7K is about right. And I didn't look this up particularly, but I can't imagine that there is that many programming languages. I would have thought a couple of hundred at most. Once again, barring, do you consider Python with Spanish, the kind of Spanish version of Python, where they have just replaced some of the words with Spanish words, the English words with Spanish words? Is that a different programming language? I'd say probably not, but once again, I don't know this. Typically, they have writing systems, and it's for preservation of sounds and signs. So if we're thinking back to languages over the millennium, the cavemen back in our distant ancestors, they had some sort of language, and typically they would try and create some sort of system which would go with this language as well, or once they had evolved up into that point, I guess. So the Romans, they had the, Arabic numerals, which they kind of took from elsewhere, I believe, but then they have their own system of writing things down, and, people in Greece did, and then people in Mesopotamia, and all these sorts of things. So there is this kind of idea that they will have a writing system attached to it, because typically human language or spoken language was probably spoken first, and then the writing component came afterwards. This is going to be very different from programming languages, unless, there was some savant, very autistic person who was saying things in brackets and stuff before, semicolon, bracket, what, and then somehow that made it into coding. Alan Turing, perhaps, who knows? I never met the guy, so. And I suppose before I came into this, I learned Spanish to a reasonable degree. For those wondering, it was probably around the B2 to A1 level, I guess. Certainly not fluent, very conversational. Go check out Reseñas in Spanglish for my book reviews on YouTube, or reviews in Spanglish, which is the kind of English subtitle you might be findable on, and you can kind of get a fair idea of what my Spanish was. And then my goal for learning German was to improve the podcast, because there are quite a few things which can be automated podcasting wise, and a lot of it uses RSS feeds. A lot of this can be created in this manner. So that is, I suppose, my basic starting point. And then it's okay, let's get into maybe what are some of the similarities to begin with. And I'm definitely going to probably take the argument that they are more different than they are similar, this being a programming language and a human language, or a human spoken language. But I'll try and steelman the argument of why they are similar. So here's a couple of the points that I came up with. So 0 to 9 he was learning Spanish, and then 9 to whatever he was learning English here in Australia. I don't think that helped him for his future ventures in trying to learn French. It's not like the learning process had an addition to it. But as an adult, once you go through that process, I do believe that getting the next language after that, you've learned the process of learning the language. And I have heard very much similarities when once you get a programming language, you can kind of spend a modicum of time and be able to get another one of them. So this is jumping to my little point number 3 here, which was I've heard stories of programmers picking up a new language in a week. I don't know if that's true. I just assume that is true. It sounds plausible to me. And this is definitely plausible and possible, I think, if you have another language, a human language, this being the case, where you can pick up another language probably pretty quickly. If you have English and then Spanish, for example, I do believe that getting another one is another one of the Romance languages. So this being Romanian, of Italian, of French, and I believe there's one more, Latin, I guess, maybe not Latin. You can get another one of those relatively easy. It won't be perfect, much like I'm sure these programmers who can learn another language in a week, it won't be perfect, but I think there's potentially a similarity there. And then even in the crazy case of this guy who learned Icelandic in a week, I believe if you just type in like Icelandic and learning Icelandic in 1 week, there's this guy who was kind of a savant at languages, very, very much a unique outlier, who spent one week learning Icelandic, and then to kind of prove that he had learnt it, he went on live television in Iceland and spoke it. So it is kind of possible, and I think the similarities between the two of them in that one respect is perhaps valid. I think both of them can be gamified. So in particular, the learning process of this, I mean, Duolingo's obvious just gamification to the max of learning another human language. You have your kind of path, you get gems and rewards. If you don't do it on a certain day and keep your streak up, you lose your streak, or you get penalties and things like this. Obviously very gamified. When I was starting off with Python and the two books that I was looking up, which were Algorithms for Dummies and Coding for Beginners Using Python by Louis Stowell. That's the second book, and Algorithms for Dummies by John Mueller and Luca Masseron. There was games included in these. You could create these little mini games of Pong, for example, I'm sure you can create Snake. You can draw things. It's very much in the kind of culture of coding, learning coding, especially for kids. You create games, you create these fun things. Oh, let's do this, let's do that. And so much of the human language learning that I've seen through, especially something like Duolingo, but I believe even actual classes and whatnot, there is this kind of gamification. You can level up and win things. So there's that kind of similarity. And it also requires active attention. You're not going to pick up a Python or C++ or something like that if you're not actively looking and trying to learn what is going on. Very much similar to learning a human language. You can't learn it through osmosis by simply listening to it as you sleep, or even just being in another country. I think there's kind of a misnomer or a false assumption that a lot of people have, which is, oh yeah, it's so much easier to learn a language in another country. Yes and no. Yes, it is easier. Is it easy to learn another language? Hell no. So it's kind of weird using the word easy in that example, because you're just going from merely very difficult to difficult. So there is this similarity, I suppose, where it does require active attention. Just because you're in Spain and living in Spain, it doesn't mean that you're going to pick up Spanish. No, you have to practice it with other people. You have to probably spend time on your own learning the grammar and vocabulary and new words and translations and whatnot. Much like you can see probably wherever you are in the world, but certainly here in Australia, there are some people who live 20 meters down that way from me, and they are Chinese or of some Asian descent. I don't know, because I can't speak with them. They don't speak English, and they have been here for a long time, years and years. So there is, and this portion where it's like, okay, just because you're there, it doesn't mean you're just going to pick it up naturally. No, it does require active attention, and I believe this is the case for both of the two. So there are a fair few similarities between them. But what are some of the differences then? And here we go. This is probably where I'm going to start getting into it and start really showing my true colors of what I believe here. So you already have the knowledge / concept when you are using a human language. When I am learning German or Spanish, I already know what it is that I want to say, and it's merely trying to figure out how to get that across in this other language. Now, this can become more complicated. In some cases, the translation is really, really easy. And, if you wanted to say, I have a book in English, you say, I have a book, or you say, tengo un libro in Spanish. The translation is direct, it's literal. Whereas in programming, from my opinion, when I was coming into it, I didn't have the knowledge or concept that I kind of wanted to say already. And it was kind of, from what I was gathering when I was doing it, a lot of it was trying to figure it out as I was writing things down. So in my classic example of when I had the kind of Fibonacci sequence, I know what the Fibonacci sequence is. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. You're essentially adding the previous number onto the next one to get the next one, and then you repeat that. I had the end goal of what I wanted in my mind, but I didn't have the intermediate steps of how I would get there. And so when I was trying to learn to do this task of creating a program where I could type in, give me the 16th number in the sequence, I was essentially trying to figure out that knowledge of creation in the process of writing it down. It was kind of like I was writing things down and I was hoping something would come out. Whereas typically when you're learning another language, you know what you want to say. I know I want to say it's really cloudy outside. I already have all this inbuilt just with my native language, And so I am just trying to translate and modify thoughts that I already have. Now, there is an argument I think you could make where once you get to a next level of fluency in Spanish or in German or in Russian or whatever, that having that language unlocks a new way of being able to say things which you can't say in your native language. This is definitely true in Spanish. There's a couple of things that I can express much better in Spanish, which I don't feel have the same effect in English. But to get there, you have to go through this whole process of learning the language, and this takes years and years and years. And then you can kind of get this next benefit, this ability to create something new. Whereas I feel like in coding or Spanish, in coding, you're already at that level of it's something completely new, and you're trying to figure this thing out and express it. And I just think there's a big difference between those two, where it's in the human language, you already have the knowledge concept. In the other coding programming language, you don't have that. And so you're trying to kind of get that. The next one was, I suppose communication between them is you're kind of doing it with a machine. I feel that's one of the biggest deals that's going on. So you're not communicating with another person. I suppose, if I go back to the definition of languages, it's a structured system of communication. Now, communication, I believe by default requires two people. I suppose you can communicate with yourself, but you're not going to learn programming or coding or another language, another human language, to communicate more with yourself. So no, we're obviously another entity is being involved here. And in this case, it's not with another person, you're doing it with a machine. And so code is not explained to another human with more code, for example. Machines interact between the two of them with code and binary and the digital one-off and zero kind of off-on sort of silicon-based computer chips and whatnot that they're made of. But if I was going to compare coding, let's say I had Python, I was fluent in Python, would I use Python to communicate with another human? Well, I could try and speak this to another person face to face. Okay, that's obviously not going to work. I could write this code and share it with them, but they're not going to necessarily, if we're talking about the code, we're not going to communicate in Python. We're going to communicate in whatever our native language is, or a shared language. They're speaking Spanish, I'm speaking Spanish, and we're commenting on the code. So I think there is this, another example of this is Chat GPT. I can use that to generate code with the machine through my kind of native language. So I talk to it in English and I say, hey, Chat GPT, I want you to create a program that will download, or create a script that will download every JSON file that is in this RSS feed, something I have asked it and attempted it to do. And I want you to create this in Python so that I can just copy this into my kind of Python IDE, I think it was called an IDE, I've already forgotten it, and press the start button and it will run and it will be able to do this. And here's the link to the RSS. Once again, I do all of that in Spanish, and I'm not doing that, or in English in my case, and I'm not doing that by writing to it in Python. So I think there is a massive difference just with human languages. They're obviously going to be human to human, or that is kind of the express purpose of it. I don't learn German to be able to speak to a machine. Whereas with Python or with C++ or any of the JavaScript, whatever, TypeScript, whatever you want, you are going to be using this to communicate with a machine. So I think that there is a big difference there, and I'll explain why in the summary, why I think that has a massive impact. Another one, and kind of I had to limit myself to just 3, otherwise I would have gone overboard, was when it doesn't work, you're screwed. So if you're writing something in Python and you make a a spelling error, you miss a space when you should have had one, or you put a space when there shouldn't be one, and you run the program, it will not work. There will be red error messages, stuff is happening and it's not working well. Whereas if you have a human spoken language, you can still have very stodgy Spanish and still communicate, and communication can still happen. Is it going to be the optimal degree? No, but it's not going to be this kind of 0 or 1. It works or it doesn't work. You can have immaculate code, but with one bug, it can be useless. Whereas you can have very, very dodgy Spanish and with many, many bugs and mispronunciations of putting verbs and subjects in the wrong order, of having a mistranslated word where you wanted to say, I don't know, bloque, and you instead said bloke or bloque or blocker or whatever. And this, you can still have this communication going on. You can still have the other person understand what it is that you're trying to communicate, and vice versa. If you're at a lower level than them, they can still say a lot of things at you, and you might not understand every single word. I don't understand every single word when someone speaks in Spanish with me, but I understand 95%, and that allows for really good communication. I've had conversation where I understood 20% and I still kind of got what they were trying to say, even though obviously the nuance and whatnot is much diminished, if not lost. So there is this big difference. I think once again, it's this kind of off and on type of deal where it just won't work if you've got bugs. The machine doesn't have the kind of common sense, the ability to interpret things in a kind of generous manner, whereas people can do that when you're communicating with someone else via email. And this can be in written. When I say human language and I say spoken language, I also do mean that you can write this thing to other people and whatnot, encompassing the whole of it. So it's not just the auditory form, although that is obviously the most common. You can still have this written down in Spanish books, for example, or in emails, or plaques on whatever. So there's a couple of things to just chew on there, I suppose. I'm going to maybe jump into the Boostagram Lounge here, and we'll then get into the next section afterwards of why the learning methods are different, a summary, and the housekeeping. But onto the Boostagram Lounge. Wow. Okay, we've had a lot of support this week, and it's great. I'm very appreciative of, and I'm going to just say at the front, if I do miss someone, please forgive me, because I have been changing up our systems, and you would have heard this in the chat that I had with Dave Jones, where I've included, one, a lot more people in the splits, and two, I've included kind of redundancies so I can see boostagrams within various sections. This has been helpful, but it's also causing me some dilemmas, because now it's kind of like all three different methods that I had for checking this have captured some and not captured others. So I'm just going to do this the best way I can. So I'm going to first jump on into Fountain, where I have my kind of Fountain wallet set up, and I can see a fair few boosts coming in. So on May 5th, we have Cole McCormick 1, host of America Plus, and he says, sends in 15,555. Boom, Cole, thank you so much, my friend. He says, I'm holding on to the story that the biggest companies and brands were made during the worst economic times, trials and tribulations, intentions and obstacles. We literally have lightning in the palm of our hands. Keep building value, brother. More value will flow as you continue to follow your instinct. Thank you, my friend. He's probably there talking about the just value for value section that I was doing of the last episode, which was how did I survive the Aussie wildlife, or last Musings episode, I should say. And so, yes, I am working hard on this. I am going to come out with the next season of the Value for Value podcast in the next month in May is what I will say. And I'm going to keep working on that. I'm going to continue following my instinct, and my instinct is screaming to me that Value for Value is going to be bigger in the future, and I want to help propagate that and be one of the people who has helped that. So I'm going to keep jumping onto here, and Cole comes in again on May 8th, and this is with my chat with Dave Jones, and he says, in regards to peak social media, there has definitely been a change. I think the main apps are more info media. I use Twitter and YouTube to learn mostly. It's hard to know what to post, but it's about the info being shared. Facebook is all family photos in my world. I want more humans though, more experiences. Scrolling should be productive, not consuming. Very true, Cole. It is, I think, becoming a lot more stark, the differences between the two of them, between all of them. And I am starting to appreciate now more, especially with Juan having a baby, going onto his Instagram stories and his Instagram page and seeing, okay, like, wow, this is great. This is where I do want these small snippets of photos to find their way to me. On Twitter, I do want to have info and whatnot, but it is this kind of peak social media that Dave Jones was talking about was basically the idea that we've hit the stage where we have hit too much information, and it is the experiences on these places are getting just distorted and weirded out. And what's the reason for this? Could be partly due to them all running on an advertising model, which is just going to drive clickbait and thumbnails of weird stuff, of generating controversy and drama and hate, because that gets more eyeballs, and then that gets more advertising money and revenue and whatnot for them. Could it just be we've gotten used to the digital medium, and then we're now kind of, because it's infiltrating everywhere into our lives, into our work, into our, pleasure time with other friends and whatnot. Maybe it is, we're just going like, okay, we need to step back. But I think there is an idea that, perhaps we have reached peak social media, and could be totally wrong. Perhaps we have got more to go, and that we're all going to get sucked into the machine. Who knows? So we boosted 4,444 sats there. I'm going to have to check on you, Cole, because I think you're going to get reasonably close to getting a shirt soon. I think with some of those, let me, I can quickly jump onto the Mere Mortals website here. So if you go to meremortalspodcast.com/supporter, you can see how much you have boosted in over, or the total, how much you boosted in across all three shows, Value for Value, Mere Mortals, and Mere Mortals Book Reviews. And these are all collated by myself, and I can just jump down here and I see Cole is on, oh, okay, he's not that high. It's on 7,880. Cole, if you get up to 100,000 sats, mate, we will be sending you a Mere Mortals t-shirt. So that'll probably jump you up to around 20, 30 something there. So just keep plugging away, man. And if you want that shirt, just keep boosting in. And streaming, because I believe, actually, no, these are just boost. We sorry, we don't have the streaming amounts. Also, we have McIntosh here, who boosted in about a day ago, and he says, welcome to 2100 sats, and he says, welcome to the world, Juan's daughter. I will throw in my prediction that by the time you turn 21, in 5 halving cycles, Bitcoin will be used by 50% of the world. People in the so-called industrial nations who don't use are thought of as Luddites, and 1 Bitcoin in the 500,000 to 1 million USD value. Current value, not hyperinflated value, the dollar has become, in brackets there. Oh, and after a lot of turmoil, like BRICS nations trying their own currency, Bitcoin is the reserve currency, McIntosh. Well, there you go. Little Juan's baby daughter. I'm not going to name her, by the way. That is Juan's privilege as the father. And so I'm going to make sure I keep tight-lipped on her name. But yes, she has a very interesting world to look forward to, based on McIntosh's prediction there, in 21. And so 21 years until Bitcoin is at a pretty high price there. This isn't a boostagram, but I'm just really enjoying this. So I'm just going to kind of read out everything that has come in. So Börsen Gelaber, who has a show called Börsen Gelaber, which is in German, I believe it means like the stock exchange or the markets. Kind of, I did kind of learn this once, but it's just a word that it's a bit beyond my current German. I don't really need to know stocks and markets at the moment. But he says, could well become that way. For me, Bitcoin has to reach the status of digital gold with a market cap around 10x of the current before I will think about anything else. Some people talk about this already, but we are not there yet. BTC is still very small compared to the gold market cap. So that was him responding to McIntosh's comment there. Very, very cool. I love this. We have, and man, this is such a great joy to see you again. Petar, the slab, 7,777 sats sent in 3 hours ago. Dave Podbro Jones, keeping it real. Double finger peace sign emoji. Peter, it's glad to see you're still around, mate. I know I have been missing for a while. I would love to know the reason for that. Was it me? What did I do? I'm sure it was something I did stupid, but it is great to see you back, and thank you once again for your support. You are by far way out ahead of the of our ranking systems. I can tell you how much you actually have sent in to us. And this is not even including all the streaming amounts. You're at 1,742,150. You've been a massive supporter of the show, Peter. Thank you so much, my friend. Really, really do appreciate that. So that's just all the stuff I can see on Fountain. Now, because I have Satoshi streams also enabled, I can go into my Discord where I have a bot set up which should capture every single one, but it's been dodgy and it's only captured a couple of them. But it did capture one which Fountain didn't for some reason. So going to jump into the Boostagrams here, and I see that I have Adam Curry, and this was sent yesterday, and he says, boosting big. Since I listen to a lot on my light phone without streaming sats, we need the auto. I don't know. Yeah, showing my lack of ability to speak code quickly, or even just symbols. Less than symbol, auto, the word auto, greater than symbol. Option in the value block, exclamation mark, 77,777. That is our baller boost for this week. Thank you very much, Adam. Mr. Adam Curry, I'm going to contact you about getting a shirt because I know you have jumped over that 100,000 limit well and truly by now. So thank you very much there. Now, I'm also going to jump on to my Albi wallet because I have one of them set up, and unfortunately, with this one, I can only see to a certain extent before it kind of cuts me off. What I do see is a lot of streaming in here from people, and this is from people like Gene Bean. This is from people like Mary Oscar Mary of the Fountain app. I can see that in there. So that was an hour ago, 2 hours ago. Thank you very much, both of you. And I also can see a kind of hidden boost here, which I don't know why this isn't showing in Fountain. I'm going to have to contact Oscar. But basically, we have Dave, and this is from an unknown sender, so apologies. I can't actually call you out for thanking you. This was from the Castomatic app, and he says, Dave, I'm glad to hear you're going to build the feed exporter that includes ValueBox at some point. I'm going to want that too. All right, awesome. So, Dave, I do hope you got that message. By the way, if you're listening to that episode with Dave Jones, I've included him as a 30% split. So every Boostagram that goes in, 30% of that will go to him. So that is, I love this stuff. I love it. So damn cool. Those are all the ones I have access to at the moment. So if I have missed you, apologies. I'm going to try and contact both Oscar Mary from the Fountain app because I'm not sure why the Customatic one didn't show up in there. And I'm also going to contact the guys at Satoshi Stream to really try and figure out why that automatic Boostagram sender honor isn't working at the moment. But for everyone, I probably should have explained this so right at the start. So Boostagram, all of these things that I'm reading out now, messages that people have sent in to the podcast whilst listening to the actual podcast. So they've done this within their own podcasting app. You might ask, but Kyron, that's impossible. It's not doable. I'm trying on Spotify and I don't see any button to do that. And that is the problem. It is because you're on Spotify or you're on Apple or you're on a legacy media, legacy podcasting app. And the problem with them is that they don't keep up with the times. They don't have the ability to send a message directly into me. within an open spec where it's kind of playing by the rules. Spotify does have some things like polls where you can kind of respond to them. And they're set up by default. If you do that, I will try and go in at some point, but I don't have the ability to have that message showing up on my desktop and on my phone and in 3 or 4 different places like I do with all of this cool podcasting 2.0 stuff. If you want to know what podcasting 2.0 is, I would definitely recommend checking out probably the first chat with Dave Jones, which was conversation number 54. So if you go on to meremortalspodcast.com and in the search bar for the podcasting section, the main podcast section, if you type in Dave or Dave Jones, you'll see both of them come up. Or if you go into other places on the internet and type that in, hopefully Chat GPT will find you out. But all of these are messages that people have sent in with an amount attached to it. And this amount can be extremely little. It can be extremely a lot. That Adam Curry one was sent in from Curocaster. Peter and Cole, they were both from Fountain. That unknown person, that was from Castomatic. You can see all of these messages are coming from different podcasting apps. So I'm not asking you to go to one app in particular, which you have to download this one in particular. All I'm asking is, hey, if you want to send in some support to the show, try out a new app. Try out something like Podfans or Fountain or Curocaster or Castomatic or Podverse or there's like 2 or 3 the Castomatic. There's so many different ones, and you will find a good experience with one of them. And you can help support the show, and I will read out your messages every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, whilst live. Whoa. Neoskeptic in the chat, he says, I only know the language of love. Oh, Neoskeptic of my heart. Why do you want to learn how to code? My reason for wanting to learn code was pretty much because I really wanted to be able to improve the podcast. So in particular, there's a lot of things. Mostly it's all great and fine at the moment. It is if I ever wanted to move host, which I have done multiple times with these podcasts to, kind of stay with the latest and greatest, it breaks a lot of things. And those broken things, at the moment, they can only be fixed by knowing some Python, by knowing a programming language. So I can automatically say, grab these files from this numbered set of podcasts. I've got them labeled 386, 385, 384. Go into the chapters file. There is a chapters file in every one of them. Go to the numbers. I've got them numbered 1 through 10 or whatever, and create a file from this. And, if I upload them in these certain places on the internet, reference that file. Basically, there's a whole lot of manual stuff if I wanted to change things, and it would be amazing if I could automate that. But am I going to? Find out soon, because I'm going to jump into the very next session right now. So what am I going to talk about now? Well, I'm going to talk about the learning methods. So this is just, I think, something that I think was worth repeating and coming up with. I have attempted to learn Python. I have learned Spanish to a reasonable degree, I think most people would say, and I am learning German at the moment. What can I comment on the learning methods of all these different things? Well, what I've noticed is that programming emphasizes having a specific goal in mind. I've been told this by multiple people in real life. I've been told by multiple people through the screen itself. I've been told by multiple people in the books that I read about coding, having a specific goal of what it is that you want to do. Now, for me, I kind of did have the specific goal. I wanted to learn how to create JSON feeds by automating the images that I have already stored up to a database of 380 something episodes. If you include all the conversations and the book reviews, 600, 700, I don't even know. I had that specific goal in mind. When you look at something like learning another spoken language, I don't actually think you need that specificity. And to prove this, I have my book here, my German book with all the creepy crawlies on it. And I've had the title here, Deutsch. And then I have had why underneath that. And so this was just my way of kind of affirming what it was that I wanted to do with German, maybe how far I wanted to get, and the kind of reasons I was learning it. So here we go. I have a whole bunch of dot points here. So why? To continue to expand my abilities and learn new things, to gain a greater knowledge of language structures to help me become a better communicator, to unlock unique experiences with people in Europe and enjoy my future travels at a greater intensity, to lessen the likelihood or impact of dementia when older, to have a testing challenge that can only be gained with constant practice and gradual improvement, to feel that thrill of conversing in a foreign tongue and being somewhat mystified at how you are actually understanding, to have a reason to connect with German speakers in Brisbane, to make connections so that when I go to Europe, I will have contacts and more options available, to be a more interesting, capable person, because I am intrigued by Germany, Austria, Belgium, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, Switzerland, and the bordering countries. Because it sounds cool, exclamation mark, because I want to be able to read German authors, because I want to make more friends. You can see that my list is very vague, I think. It's one, there's a whole lot of different things for that, and ranging from the silly things like because it sounds cool to some of the more, deeper aspects of humanity, because I want to make more friends, because I want to, expand my mind, because I want to travel and get the most out of that. So I think there is something where the learning, the method of learning, it kind of, or maybe the point of learning, you can have different reasons for it. This might even be more of a difference, to be honest. I probably should have put that in the differences section, because I think that you can have these abstract reasons, whereas with coding or with Python, what is my reason for learning Python? It is, like as everyone has said, I feel it does need to be a bit more definite, a bit more stronger, the reason for that, and specific and really dialed and nailed in. Whereas learning another language, I have the amount of people I've met who are learning it because they're bored, are learning it because that's what their partner speaks, learning it for job opportunities. The amount of kind of varied and somewhat, they're not that specific. They're all kind of, oh yeah, it's kind of like this. I'd like to get it for this, that sort of deal. So what else is there in the learning methods? Well, I think it's rather restrictive for programmers, and it kind of cuts down your abilities by half, because if you think about it, only read and write is available. So you can read other people's code or code that is written down. And then, of course, the most important one, you write it out yourself. And so in essence, how do you learn coding? Well, you write it down. That's how you learn it. And that is the only way of doing it. And once again, in all of these books I was reading, Coding for Beginners using Python and Algorithms for Dummies, they were very, very emphatic that no, you can't just copy and paste the code that is written on this page, because they had, online access for you to do that if you wanted. You have to write it out yourself, because there is something in the writing process where you make mistakes, where you have spelling errors, where you accidentally press space twice, where that whole process culminates in you learning how to do it. So even just the reading method isn't really that applicable for coding. Whereas something like Spanish, I made it an active portion to do the big four things for me. So I would speak it, I would, verbally say things out loud, ideally in communication with someone else. And if I didn't have that, I would just practice pronunciation, hablo español, me llamo Kyron, that sort of thing. I would write things down. So I would create my own practice sentences in Spanish. I would have, an English sentence in mind. I'd write that down, and then I would write down roughly what I thought this could be translated into Spanish. Not perfect, but it did give me a lot of opportunities to look at something in English and then think, okay, how can I format this in Spanish? How can I really do this? There is obviously then the reading aspect. So you can have Spanish books. You can read them as much as you want. You can go to language resources online, El Espejo, the mirror, or this El Espectador. I think that's a Colombian one, very, very big, very popular, very well known. Many opportunities to read your target language. And then there's obviously the listening aspect. So you can listen to podcasts of people speaking the language. You can listen to music where they sing in that language. You can listen to TV shows or movies with the subtitles. So you're combining this. Coding, it's just so restrictive. You need to be in front of a computer and you need to be typing things out. And there is no kind of replication. There's no way that you can, I feel, really learn coding when you're out at the park, going for a walk as well. Maybe there's some aspects of the structure or format of the language, but once again, it feels like it's more of a doing thing that you need to do. So in terms of the learning methods for it, you are going to be much more restricted. Once again, this is probably better to be putting in the differences section rather than the learning section. And one of the things that I would say is it suits solitary individuals. So if you're learning how to code, it is very much a solitary activity because you can't really have multiple people typing on the keyboard at the same time. Sure, you can be in a classroom with other people who are coding, but once again, your focus is not on speaking that code with another person. It is dialed into your laptop in front of you or your computer or your tablet, whatever it is, and typing things out and trying to construct something. So this, I think, is very, very different from a human spoken language or even just a human language particularly the spoken aspect, because you are trying to communicate with someone else. Once again, this ties back into that you are communicating with a robot, and communicating with a bot or a machine is just not, it's not that it's necessarily bad or good. It's just very, very different than communicating with a human. And so, it does suit the solitary individual. And I think there is a stereotype for a reason that programmers are nerds, or they're awkward people, or they are introverts. And I think that stereotype probably exists for a reason, because those are the people who are drawn into coding, because it is by default, that's what you kind of have to be to do it. How many super extroverted people love coding? I would imagine that ratio of those people to introverts who pick it up, who stick with it, who do it for a career and things like that, to be significantly less than in other areas and avenues of life. So let's keep going. Let's jump onto the summary. Ultimately, I feel there is a fundamental difference between machines and humans. So without consciousness and perhaps even a body, but let's just stick with consciousness for the moment, communication is just so severely limited. When you're chatting with a machine using Python or C++ or something, the range of things that they can spit back out at you is so restricted. The interesting thing now is things like Chat GPT, which are large language models, and they can throw back at you things like English or Spanish or whatever it is, your native language. That is interesting, but when you have programming, that it's not like you're writing to them in code and that they're spitting back code at you. I'm sure you can do that with things like Chat GPT, but it's that communication just doesn't have this aspect of really conveying knowledge of, you're just not going to, if you have a problem with the code that they've just done, you don't write at it in code. You write at it in English, in kind of, and I'm talking about ChatGPT here, of course, where the problem is solved not by writing code to it, by writing Python at it. It's solved by English with it. And so progressing forward, and this is maybe something that is rather debatable, because I know Juan had some pretty strong views on this, was I actually see coding becoming less and less important, especially in schools. And I would not be surprised if his daughter does not need to learn code, but she needs to learn how to prompt because if you can get it to do the thing that you want without having to learn the language, the programming language, I see that as a win. And I see that as a big win for myself, for example. So, if Chat GPT and other language model interfaces work and they work decently, then the need for average people like me, I think, dramatically lessens. So, with all of this kind of whole solo discussion, this rant, if you want to put it that way, I think I've made an argument of that there is a really big difference between the two of them. The reasons you will learn a programming language versus a human spoken language is very, very different. And if you can get a lot of the benefits of the programming language without having to do it, that without having to learn how to type less than, blah, 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 close brackets, make sure that you've got all of this, lingo in line and whatnot, the syntax. I think there is a huge benefit to that. And personally, what I see myself doing and my yearly goal, which was to learn a programming language, to learn some coding, I'm going to transition that, and I'm going to make that goal, okay, learn how to use Chat GPT to get what I want, because I just don't see the benefits of learning the language anymore. Now, this is something that will be great to have Juan commenting on, because when we brought this up a fair while ago, and we were talking about, okay, who is what's one of the most important things you can do in your life? And I see he's in the chat, so maybe he can talk about this. He was saying, one of the most important things that someone or everyone should do is learn coding. And one of the most important things I said was to learn the human language, learn another spoken language. And, just based on that, and that was, we said that, a year or two ago, that was before Chat GPT. I would really like to know, does he still believe that is necessary? Because I can get it to create an interesting. I can get it to create how would I describe this? I can get it to create what I want and to download JSON files and things like that without me having to do it. So I think that's pretty dang cool. So with all that being said, I'll jump into here. So Juan in the chat was saying, to your second point, Kevin Rose talked about being directly with Tim Ferriss and showed how now being average but paired with that tech can bridge the gap of knowledge. I, by a weird way, have grown to know the language of subtlety of the body movements and the intricacies. I didn't even talk about the body language and how much that plays a part into the spoken language as well. I did have to finish my summary, the analogy of swimming and dance. So I definitely would say that both of them are waving your arms and legs around, but the carryover between them is minimal. So if you learn Spanish, I don't think that's going to help you learn a programming language. If you learn Python, I don't think that's going to help you learn a spoken language. I think there is a big difference between the two of them. And that was one of the things I was kind of surprised by. What I'm also surprised by is in the YouTube chat. It's just stuck really far behind. That's cool. That's excellent. I was wondering, I thought I had the wrong picture on the screen. So this is just a nice summary there for all of those different points. And I will just be able to say here as well, housekeeping. What can you kind of see for the future? I hope that all kind of made sense to everyone who was listening. So what are some of the things that are coming for the future? Well, Juan might be back next week. Perhaps he has hinted at me that this might be something that he was perhaps doable. If that's the case, we will have an episode which is related to obviously the process of having a baby daughter and what that is like. But if not, I might have a backup one in case, because I will really struggle to do a solo episode on that. So we'll see what that episode is. Moving forward, there will definitely be transcripts and captions for all of the audio. So if you have been missing that in the past, you will start seeing that now. I do want to get that sorted out and created for all of our past episodes as well. Once again, this is something that could perhaps be automated, but I just don't know if I have I certainly don't have the Python abilities to do that, but maybe Chat GPT can help me. I'm going to try and improve the audio quality again. I did used to do this in the past where I used a lot of the features that are built into Adobe Audition. So this is things like the parametric equalizer. This is things like the noise gate. I'll play around with it again. Let me know if you think that it improves the quality enough that I should keep doing that. If I can make it, we'll see. And then the last one is I'm probably going to start releasing the additional one on Monday evenings. So it used to be Friday evenings and Sunday evenings for the audios, and this is actually now going to change to Monday evenings. And I'm going to put everything out at 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, so it is the same day everywhere in the world, although almost. I see a lot of people in the chat were talking, and Juan and whatnot is going away, so I'll get to that soon. Here's a little fun fact that you might not know. The world, you would think, okay, there's 24, the world is circular, there's round, it is split into 24 time zones. You would think, okay, there is a point at where it is, a fraction of a second, directly on midnight here is directly at midnight on another portion of the world, but it is the opposite day, or it's like 1 second past or something like that. If you're going to split the time zones into even more individualized things. So essentially that you can't have anywhere in the world that is more than 24 hours in advance of the other, because the time zones, they should go directly down. When you transverse across the world, or when you circumnavigate the world, you are going further and further from that. So you're either gaining time and you're losing time. But when you come back to that initial point, it should be like reverse. All right, we're back to like jumping a full day forward or jumping a full day backwards. Incorrect. No, it is actually possible for you to be at somewhere in the world on Wednesday at 1 a.m. and you would then think, okay, the earliest, let's just say that is the furthermost time zone. You would then say, okay, well then the latest someone can be behind them is Tuesday at 1 a.m. Incorrect. You can actually be Wednesday 1 a.m. at one point in the world, and at another point of the world, the time will be Monday at 11 p.m. There is a 26-hour difference. Now, how this is created, it's super weird. I won't even try and explain it here, but this was all just a big way of me saying, when I release it at 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, for almost everywhere in the world, it will be on that exact same day that I'm releasing. So it will be on released on a Friday for you. It will be released on a Monday for you, unless you are in one of those really, really weird time zones, in which case it might be ever so slightly before that. You might be getting it, at 11 p.m. or something like that. So little thing there. I'm just going to finish off here with the last housekeeping, which is just talking about the chat. And he says, my little girl here agrees with you, Karen, a big difference between human and programming language. And he said he has changed his view slightly. You're right. Even more now, I think it has become more important to know the language of ask, of inputs and outputs and variables in all its variables. So human language or coding, and probably I'm assuming he's talking about Chat GPT in there as well. He is also saying that he thinks he can make it for the next week. So very, very encouraging. Hopefully that is all good. And he's off to take care. It is baby sleeping time. And Neo-Skeptic is just wishing him some good stuff. So he says, thanks once again, Karen. And thank you, Juan, for Neo-Skeptic, and Patricia for joining me in the chat. Thank you for everyone who sent in a Boostagram. This was really, really encouraging. I think that's probably one of our biggest weeks in terms of the amount of people who have boosted in, and then the various sources that they have as well. So really, really encouraging. Really makes me feel good. And I really just do want to thank all of you for that. This is a value for value podcast, so everything that I do here is for free. You can listen to this for as long as you want. You can never have any interaction with me, with Juan, with the show at all, and you can passively consume it. And I totally understand that. I have done that, and in the past, and there probably are some shows which I never will communicate with with their hosts in any meaningful manner or contribute in any meaningful manner, and that is totally fine. That is 100% part of my ethos. I just want this podcast to be everywhere for anyone at any time, and available just at the easiest of conveniences for you. So yes, I will put this on Spotify. Yes, I will put this on these legacy podcasting apps, which I personally don't use and which I wouldn't recommend to use. But look, I want you to have the best experience, and if you think that's listening to the mere mortals there, please go ahead and do that. For everyone else who is listening, though, I do the value for value model. So like I said, all of this is for free. I am providing all of this value to you up front. And then the onus on you is now to provide some value back. And if you want the show to continue, it will need to at some point reach a level where I can pay for at the very least the hosting expenses and upkeep of lights and of audio and cameras and things like that. It's not huge amounts, but it would make a big difference to be able to have those costs covered, and any additional for time, that would be amazing. You don't have to necessarily do this through a monetary form. You can do this through the simple way of sharing this with someone. If you have someone who thinks that they will have mad Python gains by learning Spanish, I would love for you to send them this, because I think I made a pretty good argument as to why and how these are so different that you won't get any mad gains by doing that, and that it is worth considering that. So I hope this does have some sort of practical benefit for the world. And you can also do this by sharing on social media. You can also do this by sending in some talent. So if you know exactly what it was in those 2 locations in the world, you can send them to me. If I got that wrong, if I got any of this wrong and there was facts that I misstated or misplaced or things that I didn't say correctly, I would love for you to please reach out and let me know that. That is valuable knowledge to have of me not just repeating errors that throughout the shows, because that does happen. You tell the same stories, you tell the same facts, and if you get your facts wrong, that can just propagate and propagate without you even knowing. So sending in some talent, if you once again, listen to the audio quality of some of the upcoming episodes and tell me, do you think that has improved? And if so, that is great talent, because your hearing is better than mine. And if that is an addition to you that is highly regarded and very valuable, please let me know that. And then if you do want to provide some monetary support, you can do that by sending in a Boostagram, or you can by getting a new podcastapp.com or podcastapps.com. And there you will find a series of podcasting apps which do have much more features and functionality. And I would recommend this going to them, even if you don't want to support, just because there are better things. I've mentioned multiple times that you will see images on the screen. You will only see those images if you are in one of these new apps, because Apple and Spotify will not do it. You will only get links to interesting things that I have put in here. I will put a link to that guy speaking Icelandic in that section where I talked about it. You will find transcripts available in these places. So if you are learning English and you are using this show, you can see transcripts of the words, the captions appearing on your screen if you are in something like Podverse, because that is one of the ways that these apps are just much better. There's all sorts of other functionalities, cool stuff you'll find in there. In the future, when I'm doing live, you will see the live notification pop up in this app. There's just so many benefits. Go check out one of the latest conversations I had with Dave Jones. It was the episode before this one, and he is part of the movement. He is one of the guys he's a coder, creating all of these, the functionality for all of these apps to exist, and his thoughts on that. So I would just recommend checking out that episode. There's been a really fun one. I do enjoy these chats with Juan usually, but it is nice every now and then to have a topic that I'm passionate about, that I kind of know relatively deeply and can kind of waffle on and rant about. So everyone, I do hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are in the world. Buen dia, guten morgen, and ciao for now. Kyron out. Hooey, hooey. Wow. All right. I think I'm pretty happy with that. I think I nailed that. That was pretty good. Everyone, thank you. If you are still in the chat, thank you for tuning in, joining for so long. Apologies, I couldn't be typing in the chat at the same time. That would have been very difficult to do a monologue and type. And there is a special skill to that, which I do not have at this very moment. If you want to be in contact with me, I am going to be in the Discord, Mere Mortals Discord. Check out basically any of these social posts that we have, and it should have a link to it down below. If you want to chat with me, I will be in there for the next half an hour as I'm doing the final editing for this. And yeah, until next Wednesday. Ciao for now.